Talk time. Morals. I'd like to introduce NumberNile. He's going to be joining me throughout this video. I'm going to basically play a segment of a voice clip that he's done for me and respond to it, and then have more voice segments from him and more responses. Unfortunately, this was the only way we could do this. Actually, the story about that, I think, is a good moral point that I do want to address, although it does reveal a bit about the technicalities that go to making these crossover videos sometimes. Basically, he's a young man who's still living at home, and his parents, or in this case his dad, I don't know his full situation, but I know he has a dad at any rate, has locked out abilities to download or things on the computer. So this made it very difficult to do a crossover. Now, the moral of the situation is I know enough about computers to have taught him how to get around every single barrier that anybody could put in a computer. There's tons of ways. I'm sure he knows plenty of ways that he could get around these things. And I was put in the position of, for a moment, just for a moment, thinking, man, I could just tell him how to do it. I mean, it would take less than a couple minutes to tell him how to get around this. But instead, I said, let's figure out a moral way. The best way to go about this is simply to talk to your parent, explain the situation, tell them what we want to do, why we want to do it, and what we're going to do with it, and to allow for just that one program to be downloaded so we can do this, and then you can get rid of it and relock everything out and monitor it and all this. Well, I'm not sure how the conversation unfolded, but for whatever reason, the dad didn't agree to it, so we had to find an alternative solution within the morals that were given. It's not always easy to be a moral person. Sometimes it makes things you want to do difficult or impossible. Let's just take a law. Laws are basically morals that are inflicted upon society, whether we agree upon of them or not. Now, we can change laws through voting, but the point would be, if you want to run a red light, there's going to be consequences for that action. You could kill somebody, yourself. If nobody's around and there's a red light and you don't see anybody for miles, could you run that red light? Yes, you could. There's nothing to stop you. What if there was a camera that caught your camera and you got a ticket for it later? Well, then you have a consequence to breaking the law. Well, what is the consequence of breaking your own moral? Ultimately, if you have no particular set of values that say that there is a consequence beyond it. For example, if you don't have a faith or religion particularly, then there would be no consequence other than feeling a little bit bad. But you can live with that. In other words, okay, well, so I told a lie. Big deal. And you would just go on with your life. However, if you're somebody of faith, I really feel like you would definitely know that there's a different consequence involved, and that there would be an accountability beyond just this life. Yeah, I feel bad now, but just think about when I have to face my Creator and explain my actions. I'm going to really have a tough time saying, why did I break this moral? Because I felt like doing it. I'm going to get probably a certain sort of punishment for that. I don't know what, but I'm going to be held accountable for those actions. So that's a little bit about that. Moving on, here's NumberNile.
Like you, I'm pretty concerned with the moral dive bomb that not only America but the world has taken. And I'm especially concerned with the moral dive bomb America's taken because we are looked to by the world as a source of greatness, as a source of we should model ourselves like them. And I mean, the biggest example that comes to mind are the Saw movies. Now it's become acceptable to watch in awe and occasionally laugh as someone is strapped into a maniacal device and tortured to death. What? I mean, when did this start becoming acceptable? If you were to go back to even the 1920s, the Great Depression, if the Saw movies would have come out, the director, whoever made those movies, they'd be dead. They'd be lynch mobbed. It's absolutely ridiculous that it is now acceptable to laugh at people who are dying, to think that human life is dispensable. And I don't know when it started. I don't know how it started. I'm tempted to say it was jump-started by the Cube movies, but my biggest issue with morality in America is that human life has become dispensable. It is now okay to kill somebody to prove a point. No, that's not right. That needs to stop. That's my biggest problem with America and the world in general, is that we're fighting wars. The death penalty is still acceptable. It's okay to strap someone in a chair and electrocute them to death. I mean, when did this start becoming legal? I mean, obviously executions have been around for a while, but I would have been opposed to it then, and I'm extremely opposed to it now, because now the ways of killing people are just so sadistic. You wrap them down into a chair, you let everybody see them, you let everybody see their shame right before they get killed, and everybody gets to see you as you're being killed? What? When did this start happening? It just makes me angry. And along with...
Okay, and I'm going to pause here and commentary on the death penalty. It's interesting. The death penalty has a unique history to it, that public hangings were widely accepted and a spectacle. And the very last public hanging was such a media spectacle. And even more so because there was going to be a woman police officer that was going to pull the lever that would drop the trap that made the person fall down, that would then kill the person because their neck is attached to a rope. This was such a media frenzy, they decided not to have the woman do it, but instead have a man do it as normal. And but it was still a huge media frenzy even at that time. And we're talking, I can't give an exact date. I'm sorry, but I'm just referencing this story offhand. But at the time, even then, the media was in place. There was newspapers and radio. So it was a big deal, and there was a lot of people there to watch it. Be like, oh yeah, a girl's gonna kill a guy instead of a guy. Oh, this is gonna, and it was a public spectacle. Let's watch this person get killed. After that, public executions were no longer allowed. It was going to be a private matter. We were going to execute people, but we were just going to do it behind closed doors. But it's still a public spectacle. They allow family and friends and whoever is signed up to watch the person die. This is supposed to be the biggest punishment that we can give to somebody that's a criminal, that's done something bad. The idea behind prisons and jail is that it's there to prevent people from doing bad things. Like I was saying earlier, I don't want to run that red light, not because it's bad to do it, but because I don't want to get a ticket for doing it. I don't want to go to jail for doing it. My moral code is only defined by the sense of, will I get caught later, not will I have something to answer to later in life or later in the afterlife. I think even those of faith have this issue of really accounting for themselves and their own morals, and really saying, is what I'm doing right? And even if it's wrong, not remembering or not thinking about that I'm going to have to hold myself accountable for these actions later on. How strong are our morals as a society that when we don't have anything to say, well, if you don't do this, this is going to be the consequence, if not now, then later.